All right.
You know when you're ready?
I'm
okay,
ready.
Then I'll stop typing.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. It's rude to type while someone's talking, Paul. Star Trek, our favorite frontier. These are the podcasts of Aaron and Polly, their ongoing mission to explore all things Trek, to seek out cool things and pick them apart, to boldly complain as no one's complained before. Hi, I'm Aaron.
And this is Paul.
Welcome to week 3 of Star Trek Discovery Season 2, and another very exciting episode of Star Trek with Aaron and Polly.
Where we will always remain Klingon.
Always. And we're, Paul and I are usually just shorn down to our scalps, right? And, because we're getting back to our Klingon roots, we have grown out our magnificent locks of hair. I mean, we are just, we practically look like Klingon Jesus. I mean, we have just got hair all over.
To be fair, neither of us are particularly blessed in the the head of hair department. So we more look like, we have the island in the middle, and the hair on the back.
That's fair. That's fair.
Yeah,
but
which is honestly kind of how Klingons look.
Kind of bit. So, before we get into talking about this week's episode of Star Trek Discovery, there were actually some Star Trek comics that came out this week.
And we actually read them. That is the. I mean, I think there are Star Trek comics every week. We just don't read them.
Well, one of us reads them.
One of
us. One of us. Yeah. But I got to tell you, the much anticipated Star Trek 2020, meaning it's either a story 20 years in the future or 20 years in the past. This is the Star Trek edition of that about Picard during his days on the Stargazer, and written by Peter David and illustrated by J.K. Woodard. I was really looking forward to this book, Paul, and boy, it did not disappoint. I really enjoyed this book.
Yeah, I thought it was great. So this story is set 20 years before the events of Star Trek Next Generation, even though I don't know if it's 20 years before the first episode or just some point in the past. And features Picard's first interaction with Beverly Crusher, or at this point in her career, or life, I should say, Beverly Howard, because she is engaged to be married to Picard's number one, Howard. What is the guy's name? Something Howard.
Jack Crusher.
Or something. Jack Crusher.
Yeah.
I decided to pick this one up as well. And I thought it was really well done. I had some qualms with the art, which I'll get to here in a minute. But story-wise, I thought it was Picard is a new captain, and he's out to prove something to his crew.
Yeah,
and it goes horribly awry.
Well, as these things do. I thought that Woodard did a remarkable job on making the characters look like the actors who played them. I mean, up to and including Jack Crusher, who, what do we see once, maybe twice in Next Generation? Yeah. I really dug that, and I think Woodard's got a really keen knack for painting the technology and whatnot. And the only thing that I had concerns with in the art is that sometimes I felt like he was trying to make a photo reference fit the panel, where the photo reference really didn't suit the panel.
And that was my issue with it as well. I felt like J.K. Woodard, he clearly uses photo reference, which is fine.
Yeah.
But at the same time, in the context of this book, Picard is 20 years younger. He has hair. And sometimes you can see he just kind of like painted Picard the way he was on the screen without hair,
right,
and then threw some hair on top of it. And in some panels it works okay. In some panels it literally looks like the hair is hovering above his head. There's on page 7, there's a particular moment at the bottom right corner of that page in the last panel where Picard's hair is just kind of sitting on top of his bald head.
Yeah.
And those moments I was like, come on, and I'm not a huge fan of photo reference to begin with. I'm more a fan of make them look vaguely like the characters without me having to understand that you're watching episodes of the Next Generation to look specifically at the photo reference.
Yeah.
And so that took me out of the moment, but otherwise I enjoyed it.
He is so photorealistic in the way he paints the characters and how closely he wants them to resemble the actual actors from the show, that it reminds me very much of the old Star Trek photo novels from the original series. And I don't know if you've ever seen those, Paul, but that's where they took production stills and produced them like a comic. In fact, if you want to see a modern representation of that, John Byrne has a whole series of comics in which he has taken photo stills from the original series and created new stories out of them, by digitally manipulating them. But there is a certain feel to that because of how he photo references. But that said, I very much enjoyed this. Woodard's got a very painterly style. But beyond that, it was so nostalgic to read Peter David again. I'm not reading a current comic by Peter David these days. And if you are listening to our Funny Book show, we read comics every week. I don't think that there's anything been in my pool pile for probably a couple of years from Peter David. I know he's still writing regularly. I just don't read anything that he's doing. And it was just nice to see him back on this horse because, as we shared in last week's show, he used to be the name in both Star Trek novels and Star Trek comics. So it was nice to read his words again.
Yeah, agreed. I like you said, I guess he does write regularly. I think he wrote Spider-Man or whatever, Spider-Man 2099 book for Marvel. And I know he has a lot of regular content. I just don't necessarily follow him as a writer anymore. But, Star Trek is one of his loves. He writes very well.
He voices
in that universe.
Yeah, he voices the characters very well, I think. I mean, I had no problems believing that these words were coming out of Picard's mouth. And that's not always the case. There are some writers who get in with these characters and I'm like, that doesn't sound like that character at all. So,
yeah.
I mean, he's got a very, close relationship with these characters and boy, it was sure nice to read those again. I think we had mentioned last week that, most everything that seems to come out from IDW up until recently, with the Star Trek banner on it, was written by the Tiptons. And while I think the Tiptons have done a very nice job, it's nice to get some fresh air in the room on these books. So I dug it quite a bit. So, Paul, there was another book this week that I conned you into reading. And
you did con me into this one because I wasn't originally planning on this one.
And this one is by the Tiptons. Scott and David Tipton are the writing team on Star Trek: The Q Conflict. And this is a conflict in which Q brings together all of the various crews of Star Trek except Captain Archer, because fuck that guy. But you've got your...
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I do wonder. It just occurred to me, because I was like, this doesn't feel like everybody. Now I know why.
Yeah.
It's not.
You got your Captain Kirk, you got your Captain Ben Sisko, though I think he is captain. He'd just been promoted to captain, I think, when they picked him up. You've got your Captain Janeway, and it seems like there was a fourth one.
Kirk, Janeway, and you've got the Cisco. But
Kirk, Janeway, Sisko.
But I think at the point,
were there just 3 crews they grabbed? I guess so.
No, wow. No, there were 4 crews that they grabbed. I'm just so it's Cisco, Janeway, Kirk, and Picard.
Yes,
4.
thank you. Duh. Yeah. And so what's happened is, Captain Picard is, out on patrol in the USS Enterprise E, and they realize that all of these stars are going supernova. And of course, normally you have a small amount of stars that go supernova over a given period of time, but these are just very rapidly firing off relatively. And it turns out that there is this conflict amongst these, Q-level super beings. And so we find out that we've got, the Q continuum is at war with the Metrons that we saw in the original series, with Trelane, otherwise known as the Squire of Gothos from the original series, and the Organians, which seems strange to me in that the Organians are peaceful, non-violent entities from the original series. But we've got these 4 races of super beings all in conflict with one another, and their war is spilling over into our reality, causing these stars to go supernova and, of course, destroying the systems in which those stars reside. So Picard intervenes with Q, and Q's like, you know what? You're absolutely right. It would be better off if you humans resolved this conflict for us. And so this issue sets up all these 4 different crews, Kirk, Picard, Sisko, and Janeway, all fighting each other, to the death, we can only assume, to win this war. And so each of these super beings, Trelane, the Metrons, Q, and the Organians, pick a champion, right? And those champions will fight to win this conflict.
Well, and what I found interesting about that is obviously, Kirk is from a different time period, but the rest of them are plucked from different points in their, they're not plucked from the same point in time in their respective series.
Right. So Sisko is plucked from like season 3 of Deep Space Nine, right?
Yep.
I think the reasoning for that is that it's before Worf joins that show.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's the only reason why they didn't choose him from a period of like the Dominion War. But
he's back on the Enterprise because they're plucked from essentially like between the Next Generation crew is plucked post insurrection, pre Nemesis.
Right.
They're in the 1701E at this point.
Yep. So what'd you think, Paul?
I actually enjoyed this book. It's not an original concept. There's the secret wars that we get, in every basic continuity, every basic cinematic universe, or not cinematic, but universe. There's some type of pluck everything from a cool point in time and have them fight each other. And this issue was just set up, so I'm assuming they're going to be space battles rather than just like Picard and Sisko, duking it out on top of a mountain.
That's actually what I hope for. I hope it is space battles. I was a little concerned that everybody's on this one playing field. And I'm like, I don't really want to see these guys go hand to hand. I want to see them, employing starship strategy and tactics against each other.
I would agree. I don't think that fisticuffs, plucking all these different characters to do fisticuffs is befitting the concept of Star Trek.
Yeah.
But we don't know. They didn't really clarify. But I'm assuming it's going to be space battles. And if it's not, I think that's a missed opportunity to see these different ships at different points in time, doing battle. Even though I guess in season 3 of Deep Space Nine, they didn't really have a ship because that was before their. Well,
no. At the end of season 2, they got the Defiant. So yeah, they had the Defiant in season 3. But it was sad to me that they picked Ben Sisko out when they did, right?
Yeah,
because Ben Sisko has met Captain Kirk, and so has Jean-Luc. In fact, the only one who hasn't met Captain Kirk here is Janeway. But it would have been nice for Picard to have whispered, I met him once. I was there the day he died, and Sisko makes some aside like, I was there at Deep Space 7, wherever they were with the Trouble with Tribbles episode. It would have been nice to have had that connection, but you don't get that. I also would have liked to have seen an interaction between movie era Next Generation Worf versus Deep Space Nine Worf.
That would have been interesting.
That would have been fun. So, and I mean, I gather that they want to get these characters while they're all together, so they want to get them, during their show era, right? So you want to grab the Ben Sisko character and the Deep Space Nine crew while they're all there. You don't want to get them after the Dominion War when they've all gone their separate ways. And the same thing with Voyager. I get that, but I just wish we had got them in different places.
Yeah, it's a very, and the 1701E, the Next Generation crew. I'm surprised they went with that era. And I'm assuming at some point we'll find out why those specific eras.
Yeah. Well, and why not? And why not get Kirk during the movie years? Why not get him like post Wrath of Khan?
Yeah. Well, I guess everyone wants to see young Kirk, right? They don't necessarily want to see the older crew. They're used to drawing the younger crew. But I full disclosure, I prefer the characters in their later years than I did when they were young.
No, and I love those uniforms, right? I mean,
exactly. I love the uniforms. I love that the uniforms in Undiscovered Country. I think that, and I do. My favorite uniform is the Next Generation ones they feature in here. Yeah,
and I will say one of the things that I find a little weird is that of the 4 super entities that are in this book, 3 of them all faced Captain Kirk, right? So it's strange to me. I mean, if I'm these guys, at least one of them, I would say, okay, well, I'll take the original series Kirk, and I'll take movie era Kirk. We'll put the Kirks against each other. I understand.
Now that would be interesting.
Yeah. Yeah,
pulling the characters pulling the same character from different points in time. Give me, give me original series Kirk, movie Kirk. I guess there's really only 2 eras of Kirk, but
there's dead Kirk.
There's dead Kirk.
Well, you could have gone with Kelvin Kirk.
Oh, that's true. That's true.
I mean, I get that the idea is that let's put all these crews against each other, but you really haven't done that when you don't include Archer.
Yeah. I do find, they could be reserving that for a later issue.
You're right.
Or perhaps he's just not a fan of lending his talent to lending his likeness to adaptations. Because I don't know that I've seen Enterprise interpreted in any of these books.
I am not prepared to answer that question.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm thinking about it, right? And I'm like, have I ever seen that crew represented in comic book form?
I truly don't believe that Paramount would have signed any of those guys if they didn't sign away their likeness rights, though.
That's true. And there were comic books at the time. I do recall there being a Star Trek Enterprise comic book. I just don't know that I've seen it in the
IDW books.
In the IDW worlds. Yeah.
Well, and if there has been, I've not picked it up. But of course, I'm not a big fan of Enterprise. But anyway, I got to kick.
But I do like Scott Bakula.
Yeah. No, I it's not that I dislike those actors. I just disliked that show, except for the last season. What's funny to me is that we've got more to say about this book than we did the Picard book, and I think that's a real demonstration as to how tickled we are by the concept. That we're going, but what if they had done this? Or what if they do that? Or what if they tap that guy in later? I mean, they're holding him in reserve. The Beagle's going to be in here. So we clearly seem a little jazzed by this one.
And I got to say, the art I actually liked in this book more. It wasn't the painterly J.K. Woodard style, but it's comic booky style, and I know who the characters are without them being photo referenced, which is always my preference.
Yeah.
When it comes to comic books based on IPs.
Yeah. Now I will say, did you read the digital ash can at the back of the book?
I did not. But how was it?
It's great. I enjoyed that quite a bit, and I think that may be a story that's already been produced, that's out there. I'm going to have to go get it because I thought I owned all of the Star Trek Kelvin universe books. This is Q showing up in the Kelvin universe, with the Chris Pines crew, and it actually ties into the whole Nero storyline. I dug it a lot. It's Picard shows up, and the pages were just great. So I'm going to have to go check that out. And apparently takes place.
I'll read the Ashcan.
Apparently, it takes place in the Kelvin universe Star Trek books, and that is Star Trek number 35 is where that story starts. So I'm going to go check that out because I enjoyed it a great deal. But Paul,
okay, yes,
I want to know: did you enjoy Star Trek Discovery Season 2, Episode 3, Point of Light?
So I have some thoughts. Let me start by saying I actually did enjoy the episode, but I do want to say that it is the most season 1-esque episode so far. And it hops back and forth. There's the stuff on the internet. There's basically two storylines going on concurrently that very loosely tie together in one sequence, but otherwise it's two completely separate stories. One is essentially a backdoor pilot to Section 31. And kind of closes the door on the Tyler storyline, sets him up as a character that will be featured in Section 31 with Mirror Universe Georgiou. And the other one is I don't even want to say the resolution, but features an explanation for what's happening with Tilly and the holographic interpretation of her childhood friend. And I enjoyed them differently, I should say. The fact that they hop back and forth with the fact I was like, I'm waiting for these stories to converge, and they never do. Overall, I did enjoy it, but I was immediately concerned when they had the previously on Star Trek Discovery and they showed the goddamn Klingon boobs.
Yeah,
and I'm like, come on, can we move past that? Why is that sequence the one you show?
They paid a lot for those boobs, Paul. What I wonder is why we're not seeing, double Klingon penis, because they also spent a lot of money on that. Seems like we'd see just as much double Klingon penis as we do Klingon boobies. But I will say I really enjoyed episodes 1 and 2 of this season. And while I was entertained in episode 3, this episode did not attempt to do the same things that episodes 1 and 2 did. This episode was more of a bridge to get us deeper in, because you've really got 3 things going on in this story. You've got, playing catch up with Ash Tyler and L'Rell on the Klingon homeworld. You've got Ensign Tilly, having, seeing a ghost. And more development in that story, and then you've got the search for Spock essentially occurring when Amanda, Spock's mom, and Burnham's foster mom shows up on the ship. So you got these 3 things going on. Only one of those stories really resolves, but it bridges us into a next story. So let's take them in order. Ensign Tilly is continuing to see May, a girl that she only knew for 6 months when she was a teenager in junior high, and that we find out has died. Turns out, she's been seeing this person, and Tilly says this, and I had shared my observation that I thought it had something to do with the dark matter that she came in contact with. Well, and Tilly says, I started seeing this after I touched the dark matter. But it's more than that, because as Michael Burnham says later on, she goes, well, I touched the dark matter and I'm not seeing dead people, though she is seeing red aliens. Red angels, I mean. We are reminded that a mycelial spore hit her and, dissolved into Tilly meaningfully back in season 1. And it turns out that perhaps the dark matter energized, pushing that mycelial spore to perhaps evolve, change, what have you, and become a sentient fungus, much like my college roommate. So this sentient fungus within Tilly, apparently is leeching Tilly's memories to create May. What I don't understand about that, because Tilly only knew May when May was a child. She has transformed May into an older person. And that's the strange thing, because if the fungus was taking it from memory, how would it know to age her up? That was weird.
Well, they did kind of, because I wondered the same thing, and they basically were like, your mind does funny things. That was basically their explanation for it. Your mind does funny things.
But they do manage to extract the fungus from Tilly, and it looks like a big snot ball, right? That they put into a force bubble. So I'm sure there's more of that to come, because the fungus wanted something. It wanted
something from Stamets.
And it kept referring to Stamets as the captain, and it referred to Stamets as the captain because Stamets is the guy who pilots the ship through the Spore network. So, maybe it's, I want to get back to the mycelial continuum. But, it does beg a question, and I think this is the purpose of the episode, is it's got you asking questions. We know that Culver, Stamets' husband, is in that mycelial network. So is it Culver that he's talking to there, or is it a sentient fungus?
That's good question.
That's my question. Okay, so...
Well, before we move on from that storyline, I do want to say something in reference to that, because so, like we said, there are 3 storylines going on. One's kind of, the Burnham, which we're going to talk about here in a second. The Burnham and Spock's mom storyline is one thing. Amanda is one thing. This one kind of goes the length of the episode, as does the Tyler Laurel storyline. Mm-hmm. And I felt like the episode. So this storyline basically stops when they pull the snot monster out of Tilly.
Yeah.
And then then they hop back. The booger. Then they hop back to Tyler and Laurel, and then I kind of expected them to hop back to the storyline, and they don't.
Yeah.
So it just felt like a very abrupt ending. I felt like, okay, well, I guess we'll continue that next week, because they pull the snot monster out, episode over. We never go back to find out. The last time we see the snot monster is floating in air, and that's it.
Yeah.
But I do want to say, did you notice new disco shirts?
I did notice new disco shirts. How long can it be before Paul's running in a new disco shirt?
I did look at it online. I will probably purchase it. It's the new cadet training program disco shirt. It's pretty sweet. They have hats too.
What did they come with snot monsters?
They do not. Well, maybe if you spend a certain amount, it's possible.
You get the premium edition.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So on Kronos, Laurel, who's grown out her hair, and boy, Klingons, they grow some hair pretty fast. That's
no joke.
All of them awfully hairy, including Ash Tyler, who's got this just crazy beard thing going on. And he's got his hipster doofus top knot thing going too.
Hipster doofus.
Yeah.
A man. Well, it's not even a man bun. It's just it's weird.
Yeah. He looks like he's going to serve you coffee in Seattle. So Laurel is still very much in love with Ash Tyler / Vogue, right? But when she reaches out and tries to, get us some new shots of perhaps Klingon boobies, Ash Tyler recoils and confides in her. He says, every time you touch me, it feels like violation. Because, when he was going through his transformation, he did not remember their encounters as sweet, sweet lovemaking. He remembered it as rape. And I think that's a really interesting story to tell, particularly from a male perspective, when you typically get that from a female perspective. He sees that as, he was horribly violated and abused. And of course, that was never what Laurel did to him. It's the memories that he has and the way those memories were restructured after that rather, torturous transformation he underwent. But, Laurel is the chancellor of the Klingon Empire, and she has busily worked to consolidate all the families, into one empire, as opposed to being, clan-led as they were in season 1. And as such, they have combined their resources to design their flagship design for their fleet, the Klingon D7 battlecruiser, which is the model type that you saw in the original series Star Trek and even in Star Trek the Motion Picture. It is a design with which we are all familiar, and it unites the Empire under one banner. It doesn't have a Klingon house sigil on it. It has the unified emblem of the Klingon Empire. But of course, the Klingons are a patriarchy. And the patriarchy doesn't want to let go of its power to a female. And so there's all kinds of machinations, what I would characterize as dishonorable machinations going on in the background to unseat Laurel. and using her relationship with Ash Tyler, because even though it's well documented that he was originally Klingon and then transformed into a human to serve the Klingon Empire, nobody respects his current form. And of course, a few respected his original form because he was an albino. So he's got all of that working against him. So,
and on top of it, he's got the hair thing.
Well, but a magnificent beard, Paul. A magnificent beard. I mean, that beard is all the way full out on his chest. I mean, that is a magnificent beard Ash Tyler is sporting. But we find out, and a secret kept from even Ash Tyler himself, that when Voq and L'Rell were knocking boots, but prior to his transformation, L'Rell got pregnant and birthed a boy. And that boy, also albino as Voq was, has been kept in secret because, L'Rell didn't want to tie Ash Tyler to Klingon in that manner. And she felt that having a child, and I wasn't sure if it was out of wedlock or, with Voq, but it would work against her. It would weaken her for them to see her as mother, right?
Yeah.
And so she's kept him in secret. But of course, one of her enemies has found out about this and chooses to use it against him. Hijinks ensue, and it looks like L'Rell and Ash Tyler are about to be murdered by the evil bad Klingon, when who shows up to save the day? Mirror Universe Captain Georgiou.
Yes.
I have one complaint about that. Because, you knew Section 31, particularly with Ash Tyler having shared with Burnham earlier in the episode, hey, I think there's going to be a problem here on Kronos with the houses not uniting behind L'Rell. You knew that someone was coming. My problem is we've seen so many previews of that scene with Georgiou in the hood that there was no surprise to it. And that's one of the things, I mean, you are not paying for CBS All Access unless you're a Star Trek fan. So I really wish they would not take these reveals and put them in their trailers, because we're going to watch it anyway. I wish that what they would include in the trailers is just the big shots that aren't a surprise. It bugged me because I'm like, well, that was that would have been a cool surprise, except I knew exactly who that was going to be.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm. And I thought, it was a well done sequence. I think that the actress Michelle Yeoh, who plays Georgiou, I think that's a good fit for her.
Absolutely.
Is the kind of like anti-hero, emperor / Section 31 agent now.
Yeah, and so she saves the day, saves L'Rell, saves Ash Tyler, and then confides in L'Rell, hey, look, baby's working against you, Ash Tyler's working against you, you need to kill both of them. And L'Rell refuses to do so, so the solution is Ash Tyler it drops off the baby at the temple at Boreth, because, monks, and, they're closed off from society, so the kid will be safe there. And Ash Tyler is recruited into Section 31. Meanwhile, on Kronos, L'Rell has replicated an Ash Tyler head and a dead baby body and said, my enemies killed my children. Ash Tyler betrayed us. Right, that's what it was. Ash Tyler betrayed us. Killed my child that I had in secret with Voq. And she kind of made it like Ash Tyler's not Voq anymore in that speech, and then said that the guy who actually was trying to kill them saved their lives and died in the process, and thus fully unifying the Klingon Empire. And she says, I don't want you calling me Chancellor anymore. I will have no other children. You are my children. You may now call me Mother. What'd you think about that, Paul?
Has that been established, this mother thing in Klingon?
No, there is established that there have been the rare, female leader of the Empire. But no, there's not been a title of mother, a political title of mother.
Yeah, and or referenced, nor has there really been. I was wondering if Voq and L'Rell's son was being set up to be something as well. Something that maybe we've previously seen, but I don't recall any albino Klingons really in our previous Star Trek experience.
The only albino Klingon that I recall from Star Trek was in Deep Space Nine, and it was the albino Klingon that killed the kids of the old original Klingons from the original series. Do you remember that episode where Dax joins them on a bounty hunt for that guy because he'd killed their kids or killed one of their kids? But I will say, and I'm glad I brought that up, because the Klingon who tried to murder L'Rell and Ash Tyler was from House Kor. Kor is an ancient house in Klingon history. Kor was one of the Klingons from the original series as well as from Deep Space Nine.
Yeah, okay.
Tying deeply into Star Trek history. So, go ahead.
Go ahead. No, you go ahead.
I was just going to say, I felt like I knew where that was going, when she said, "Don't call me Chancellor anymore, call me," and I'm like, oh, she's going to say Mother. And sure enough, it did. Which, I like when I can predict the writing and that kind of thing where it feels organic. I'm following the logic that the character is setting up. I dug this episode in that story element, but again, this really wasn't an episode that felt like it had a beginning, middle, and end. It was an episode that felt like it was designed to get me from episode 2 to episode 4.
Yeah, agreed. I think, and everything in this episode was set up for other things.
Yeah.
Yes, the Tilly storyline furthered in pulling that thing out of her. This was definitely backdoor pilot. Like, let's close out some of the story threads from season 1. Let's set up section 31, and, kind of ease the fans' concerns about Klingon as well.
Yeah. So in the third storyline with, concerning Spock and the Red Angel, Michael Burnham and Amanda, we get a revelation as to what happened between little girl Michael Burnham and little boy Spock. Michael Burnham reveals to Amanda that she understood that the logic fanatics, what was the term she used? The logic radicals.
Yeah.
Were
something like that.
Yeah, something like that. Were gunning for Amanda and Sarek, and because they couldn't get Amanda and Sarek, they were going to go through them. They were going to go through Michael Burnham to get Spock, to push Spock out and alienate yada yada to hurt Sarek and Amanda. And Michael Burnham felt like the way that she could protect Spock was to push him out, to make him stop following her around because, he was her little brother and he followed her everywhere. Apparently at some point they were very close. And so I feel like, I had said last week that maybe it was a Pon farr thing. It sounds a whole lot more like she pushed him out by really emphasizing his alienness, like maybe, you don't belong on Earth, you don't belong on Vulcan, you don't belong anywhere kind of thing. And it crushed him, it hurt him. And, it reveals that, he has always had that hurt, which is why he won't be in the same room with Michael Burnham and why the family has not been able to get together, all 4 of them. Someone's always busy, Amanda says. And what I found really interesting about the way this played out, for a moment you felt like, or I did anyway, I felt like Amanda was going to say, okay, well now we know we can repair this. That's not what she does. I mean, I really did. There was that moment because she kisses, Michael Burnham, because Burnham is just all, busted up about this. This has been a weight she's carried for years. And when she grew to adulthood, she has tried many times, we hear, to heal this rift, and Spock won't take her calls. Spock won't talk to her. He will not engage on this subject. And, Amanda, embraces her, kisses her on the cheek, and Michael Burnham says, well, I will find him. And Amanda says, no, I will, and ices her right out. And I was like, wow, I did not see that coming. You know, because Amanda has really come across, just as she did in the original series and in the movies, is that very empathetic, sort of very sensitive, always kind of making the right choice at the right time. But choosing above, working above the line. And boy, what I read in that expression is, oh my God, I brought this girl into my house and she destroyed my son. That's what I read in that scene. And I was like, holy shit. And what I loved about it is I read that on the actress's face. It was never overtly said, but you could just see like, oh my God, I brought this person into my home. I gave her the love I could not give my son because of his Vulcan heritage, and she destroyed my son. I thought it was a really well done scene.
Absolutely. I thought, and it was a rare moment of a rare emotional beat for Michael Burnham. I find that with each passing episode, I'm struggling a little bit with the actress who plays Michael Burnham.
Sonequa Martin Green?
Yes, because she basically has one expression, which is wide-eyed and surprised, or wide-eyed and angry.
Well, they don't...
They don't give her a lot to work with.
Well, and you're right. When she was able to be vulnerable and be in a relationship with Ash Tyler, you got to see her, be more fully human. But you're right. She's very tamped down. She's very Vulcan in the way she responds to situations.
Which I'm sure is the point, right? It's just, for me, sometimes it's a little off-putting since she's the main character of the show that she doesn't have a wide range. But in this episode, you see her cry and get upset and truly get hurt, which was, I thought, not. I mean, obviously, I don't like her pain, but it was good to see the actress spread her range out.
Yeah, it was nice to see some other emotions coming from her. But I like that scene because you don't get to see a whole lot of her enjoying other people. And so Tilly wins the cadet marathon or the ensign marathon, the trainee marathon, whatever the hell the damn thing was. And you see this just broad smile on Burnham's face, and she's like, "You're amazing." And you're like, "Man, that's nice." I mean, that is because you get praise from Michael Burnham. That's not faint praise. It's not effusive. I mean, that is well earned. And so you felt good for Tilly, right? You felt good for Tilly, and you felt good for Burnham because she was enjoying Tilly's success. So when you have a character who doesn't get to emote, very often, who holds those emotions back, it really makes those emotions a lot more worthwhile when you get to experience them. It's like
I agree. And plus, new disco shirts. So there's that.
Right, and the scarcity the scarcity of her emotions makes them more rare and thus more valuable when you get to experience them. So this is, of the 3 season 2 episodes we've had so far, this is my least favorite. But I'll say it was a good episode. I felt like it did a lot of what it needed to do, but this isn't really an episode that stands on its own as the previous 2 did.
No, agreed. The previous 2 had that episodic Star Trek classic feel in that you could hop in and there's one adventure. It's wrapped up in one episode. This very much tied into other things from season 1, the Section 31 show, and, sets up this ongoing story thread. But again, I enjoyed the episode. Of the 3, it was the closest to, again, a season 1 episode for me, which is not great, but I still enjoyed it.
Yeah. No, I dug the episode. I particularly enjoyed visiting Kronos again and seeing that our Klingons look more like Klingons. So I was excited for that. So I was also glad that they didn't that the entirety of our time on Kronos was not spent with subtitles. I hate the way Star Trek Discovery does subtitles.
Well, I will say I am very thankful because they did basically what we said.
Yeah.
Which is, in mid-conversation, convert to English, but with the understanding that it's Klingon.
Exactly. That's all I needed them to do, and they did that. I was thankful for that. Because the I don't know if it's just me, but it feels like the subtitles go too fast. I mean, I had to rewind twice to make sure I was catching all of the content going by.
There are definitely a couple of moments that were a bit like, whoa, okay, hold on.
Well, and they do the text so stylized. It's not like your eye. It's not like it's got a Helvetica up there where your eye understands it and it just tracks immediately. I feel like I'm doing a little bit of translating, even though I'm reading the subtitle. So anyway, I was glad they did that, and I'm glad to watch this episode, and I'm really looking forward to episode 4. I'm a little concerned, I'm loving all this Star Trek Discovery content, but damn, that's 3 weeks of Star Trek Discovery that's just flown by, Paul.
Yeah, and they haven't announced it, but is there going to be a mid-season break? I'm assuming.
I would assume so as well, but I have not heard.
Yeah, I have not heard. But, and last year it was because it premiered in the fall. They took a break through the winter, came back after the first of the year. This year they started in the winter. And so I'm wondering, will we just go straight through of straight 13 episodes or however many episodes are in this season? Or will there also be another mid-season break and it'll return in the summer? I don't know.
Yeah.
I guess we'll find out.
Yeah. Yeah. So, Paul, thank you for joining me on this discovery of Star Trek Discovery.
Well, Aaron, remain Klingon.
I will. With the help of Kailash.
Kailash.
See you next time.
Before we wrap up,
yes.
No, I ruined Aaron's ending.
Damn you, Paul.
Say it again in 30 seconds. But before we wrap up, hit us up on Twitter at Ideology Madness. Definitely on Instagram at IOM Geek, Facebook IOM Geek, or you can give us a call on the Ideology of Madness hotline
972-763-5903. That number once again 972-763-5903. And if we use your voicemail on the show, you'll win a coveted, valuable Ideology of Madness surprise.
Now you can say it, Aaron.
Have a good week. Star Trek with Aaron and Polly is a production of IOMgeek.com. Have a question or comment? Hailing frequencies are open at 972-763-5903. Tribble wrangling provided by Triskelion Trays, no troublesome tribbles. Mr. Aponte's wardrobe provided courtesy of Garrick's Clothiers, conveniently located on the promenade.
You are in error. You are a biological unit. You are imperfect.